Welcome everyone to this moment that we're going to take a few minutes during our week of fasting and prayer. This is the first Sunday, and before we get into this fast, we decided to bring you some devotion or something that's on our minds and our hearts. And when I thought about what can I share with you tonight, it was really the story about Nehemiah and then later on Ezra. And if you remember what happened to Nehemiah, he was the cupbearer of the king. And they were still in exile, and there was people returning from Jerusalem telling him all these horrendous stories about the temple that's been broken down and all the challenges that the people have back home. And he was so troubled by it that he immediately went on a time of fasting and prayer to the Lord. And he was really struggling with the Lord about the situation that they are in, because it's so hopeless. It was so terrible for them. So I want to read for you the prayer that he prayed, because he prayed this prayer, and you find that in Nehemiah 1, and it's from verse 1 to 11, but I won't read from 1, I'm going to read from verse 4. So as soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps covenant and steadfast love for those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you, and not kept the commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you've commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you've commanded your servant Moses as saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the people. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the utmost part of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I've chosen, to make the name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. And then he went back, and the king noticed that Nehemiah was troubled. And he asked him this question, I can see you troubled. Now let's pause for a second there. Just to answer him honestly would have been a very dangerous thing to do, because you were not allowed to be troublesome or sad in the presence of the king. And yet he shared it. And the Bible talks about that short prayer he suddenly had. And he said, Lord, give me the wisdom I need. And then he explained to the king what is troubling him. And then the Lord has changed everything for him, because the king offered him to go back, to go to Jerusalem, to do what he needed to do. And he rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem in a record time. Now, I want to step just one step forward, because a little bit later, Ezra comes around, and now the people need to return to Jerusalem. The wall is built, and they need to return. And Ezra has a problem, because Ezra has already told the king that they have a God that they trust. They don't need to trust on the king. And we read this a wonderful story in Ezra 8, and I want to read you from the Bible. And he said that he wanted to, he had a problem. Ezra had a problem. He said they were gathered at the river Ahava. So I'm reading from Ezra 8, verse 21. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God, to seek from him a safe journey for ourselves and our children and all our goods. And now he's explaining the reason. Listen to this. For I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, the hand of our God is for good and on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him. So we fasted and implored our God to do this thing, and he listened to us. So in this fast, let's not put our trust in kings and kingsmen, but let's put our trust in the Lord, the God who can really make a difference. Thank you.